Mindseye and Builder Rocket Boy could be in some serious trouble. It seems really bad. And my bold prediction is that this studio is going to shut down within the next 3 months. I hope I'm wrong because there's hundreds of people that work there. But I have trouble seeing a world where this game is even close to profitable against the hundreds of millions of dollars that has been invested into it. I love to be wrong, but I don't think I am. But you don't have to believe me. Fellow YouTuber Cyberboy has actually talked to numerous current and former Builder Rocket Boy employees. And he has an upcoming video to talk about his discussions with them. He's confirmed with me via DM that everything we're talking about is not only true, but even worse. So looking forward to seeing what he has to say about it in his upcoming video. The studio allegedly is like a cult, with about 400 people now, and it's gone through a crazy rotating door of attrition. Probably the worst employee reviews of a company I've ever heard, and the volume of them is insane. Although obviously a different game than Concord, a different scenario, I could see the outcome being the same. And it does seem like at the heart of it, it's all about the ego of one man. Let's talk about where Mindseye is right now. With YouTubers that have previewed the game begging them to delay it for numerous reasons, including bugs and overall boredom, to the insights that we get from a massive amount of quantitative as well as qualitative data from Glassdoor, talking about a consistent culture of crunch, losing benefits, and overall one of the worst studio environments that I've read about. There are two CEOs that are arguably half nuts in Mark Gerhardt and Leslie Benzies from Rockstar fame, with the former insinuating that negative feedback is the result of people being paid to trash the game. It sounds like he's trying to set up some inevitable blame to place when this thing tanks. It looks like the studio has spent hundreds of millions of dollars around the last 7 to 9 years. The money seems to be running out, and it looks like they're trying to recoup what they can. There's just too much to ignore, and we're going to dig into how big of a disaster this potentially can be. And I think to do that effectively, we're going to have to start at the beginning with the conception of Builder Rocket Boy. So, Builder Rocket Boy was initially founded as Royal Circus Games in Edinburgh, Scotland, in July 2016 by Leslie Benzies of Rockstar fame. He was the former, number 3 guy at Rockstar. There was Sam Hauser, Dan Hauser, and Leslie Benzies. Of course, there was other people involved, other leadership involved, but he was very far up there. He had a dispute with Rockstar, left the company in 2016 after a 17-month sabbatical, and had a legal dispute with Rockstar's parent company, Take-Two Interactive. Claimed he was unfairly denied profits. Most claims were dismissed in 2018, and they reached a confidential settlement in 2019. Chances are he got paid, but who knows? Now, don't get me wrong, in reviewing the court documents between Take-Two and Leslie Benzies, it is possible that he got the short end of the stick from Rockstar. And I acknowledge that he was an important reason that Red Dead Redemption got completed, GTA 5, amongst other games. However, on the flip side, one might say maybe those games were completed in spite of him, especially with the more holistic information that we're getting now. So in 2018, the studio rebranded to Builder Rocket Boy, likely from the legal complaint from Rockstar Games, indicating that RCG, the acronym for Leslie Benzies' company, was too close to RSG for Rockstar Games. They started hiring talent from major studios, and they built a team of around 30 employees focused on a new project everywhere. Job postings indicated that back in 2017, Everywhere was going to be their bread and butter. It was an ambitious open world game. Now, up until 2020, we don't know where the funding came from necessarily. Was it from an angel investor? However, we do have some insight that NetEase was an existing investor by the time they had their Series B funding in 2020. So yeah, some Chinese money. In 2020, they raised over $40 million, and by that time, the team was starting to ramp up, eventually in 2020, getting to be about 400 people. As the company started to grow, it started to add some additional industry veterans in some big leadership roles. This seems like it became a rotating door of executives and employees leaving. But they trudged ahead with the development of Everywhere, and somewhere between likely 2019, 2020, although we don't know for sure, they started developing Mindseye. And in August of 2022, we got a trailer for Everywhere, which wasn't that impressive. It showed the player creativity versus Arcadia. That's their set of tools for customization that they're using within Mindseye. And they also teased Mindseye during this time. They were calling it a narrative-driven game within Everywhere's platform, which I think they've moved away from. I was kind of excited for Everywhere. I covered it on my channel. I was part of the Builders beta. I played it a couple times. It wasn't that great. It gave me bad metaverse vibes with limited creativity tools. You can make some racing games, shooting games, and platforming, but we already have game creation tools and features that does it better. And the metaverse virtual avatar thing, I believe there was a vision of like watching concerts on it and such. Something like that is not going to work unless there's a successful product accompanying it. I should also mention that in January 2022, an undisclosed amount of money was raised. How many millions? We don't know. And in December 2023, Everywhere went into a closed alpha phase. I got to jump in, check it out. I shared my feedback a few moments ago. This was a big milestone. I mean, this is something that Leslie Benzies and team have been working on since like 2016-ish. I don't think anyone was really calling it revolutionary by any means. I know people jumped in, had a good time, created some interesting things, but it just wasn't that interesting. I mean, there's plenty of games with user-generated content tools. And then they pulled in some additional funding from NetEase, Galaxy Interactive, Redbird Capital Partners, numerous investors, for about $110 million. Now, at this point in 2024, Build a Rocket Boy actually has 4 studios, one in Edinburgh, the headquarters, Budapest, Hungary, Montpellier, France, and California. And they're burning through the money. And in February, just a month after getting all this funding, they announced layoffs in publishing, QA, and art departments. Now, last week previews went out and YouTubers were given not their own footage, but footage that was provided by Build a Rocket Boy. And the overall sentiment was pretty bad. It's reportedly a broken mess, filled with bugs, the driving felt stiff. Although the cutscenes looked great and were well animated, the enemy encounters lack depth and the enemies just run at the players, which seems like some pretty rough AI problems. And a couple things to remember is this is only 3 weeks out from release, and they showed them what they wanted to show. They didn't show anything outside of that, so who knows what else is wrong. Even worse, the co-CEO, who was part of a company called Play Fusion, that Build a Rocket Boy ended up purchasing for some silly reason around AR and VR stuff that will probably not take off for them. This man thought that people that are reacting negatively to it were financed by someone. And he said there's a concentrated effort by some people that don't want to see Leslie or Build a Rocket Boy to be successful and are making a concerted effort to trash the game and studio. It's pretty easy to see the bots and repeated replies to any content that we put out. That's a really unhinged thing for a CEO to say, especially when he doesn't provide any evidence. Even more concerning is the massive amount of negative feedback around the studio and working for the studio. Where there's this much smoke, there's generally some sort of fire. Now let's take a look at some numbers. There was over 90 reviews, which is a lot for a company between 400 and 500 people. It indicates a lot of turnaround, like that 400 or 500 people that they have. They weren't the same people that were there from day one. There's attrition and so forth. But this 2.1 out of 5 is one of the lower ones I have ever seen. Only 24% would recommend to a friend, 23% approve of the CEO, and only 21% have a positive business outlook. And you could compare this all day to Rockstar or other comparable sized studios. I think you'll be hard pressed to find any that are this bad. Comments like fiddling while Rome burned, politics, egomania, talking about only one person matters, everyone else revolves around that person, and we know who they're talking about there, Leslie Benzies. Even comments implying that this project's gonna fail. This comment is very Firewalk Studios-esque. The company exists in its own bubble, refusing to acknowledge reality. The release of the main product will probably be a wake-up call, but my anticipation is that Leslie will think that gamers are at fault, not his product when it will fail badly at the box office. That office is going to be a grim place the week of June 10th. Now remember, there's been hundreds of millions of dollars invested into Mindseye as well as Everywhere. They need to sell millions of copies of Mindseye to even come close to being profitable. It's pretty clear, similar to Concord, the big problem isn't the people doing the work, it is the executives, the leadership being utterly incompetent. This detailed comment from February talking about nearly a decade of mismanagement, multiple engine changes, high staff turnover, a complete lack of direction. Attempting to develop 2 ambitious games within a single project has only made things worse. What happened everywhere? Turning the code base into an unmanageable mess. They use the example like rearranging deck chairs in the Titanic, and to fix it would require a Herculean effort. This was in February. Let's see if they did that effort. We'll know soon. It also talks about investors knowing the gig is up and they're just trying to salvage what they can. Fear was one of the most common words that I saw reading through all 90 plus reviews. You can check out the comments yourself. They are pretty insane. With so many people not just saying that, hey, it was an okay place to work or maybe a little below average, but saying it was absolutely horrific. Again, I challenge you to find worse studio reviews. Good luck with that. When you couple that with the lack of hype or interest in the game, the poor previews that indicate they should delay the game, the co-CEO's actions, and the money is insane. I think with everything we know now, having a rough idea of at least how much money has been raised. We know at least 150 million, but there was also an undisclosed series of funding that happened, so it's definitely more than 150 million. Remember, they've gotten all this documented funding starting in 2020, but from 2016 to 2020, where they started with 30-ish people, and then they started to grow to around 400 people in 2020, there was definitely quite a bit invested from somewhere, whether it was Leslie Benzies paying for it himself from his Rockstar settlement, some angel investors, something unspecified, but we know that's just more money. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that we're watching a $250 to $350 million disaster go down right now. I'd love to be wrong. I'll probably play the game. I'm definitely not going to pre-order it. I wouldn't recommend that you do either. But it's going to sell really well to be really successful, or sell a lot of microtransactions to be really successful. And I'm not sure it's set up successfully enough to do that. We're going to know in less than a few weeks though. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Of course, this is only my assessment of the situation. I just don't see a world where the game's profitable and they're able to fulfill their lofty post-launch commitments with both Mindseye and Everywhere. It's pretty ambitious, but we're gonna have to wait and see. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.